Hi, welcome to Jeremy Pryor's podcast, or what I like to call Jeremy Pryor Unfiltered. I'm his daughter and producer, Kelsey Gall, and we are excited to bring you seasons of content all the way from Tolkien to theology, from business to family. If you like to contemplate deep philosophical ideas across a wide range of topics, you've come to the right place. Make sure you give us a follow so you don't miss out on future episodes.
Hey, everybody. We're back. This is the Jeremy Pryor and April Pryor podcast. How's it going,
Hello.
April?
Good. Having a great day. Nice and sunny out, even though it's freezing cold.
Yes, in the dead of winter. So we are cruising through let's see here. We're just into the second chapter of the book, The Ruling Household. So I wanted to read this for y'all and get April's reaction. This one is called A Companion Who Helps and Opposes. All right, this is what it says. Husbands, does your wife often oppose you? Mine does, about 2 to 3 times per day. A few minutes ago, my wife sent me a text about an email blast I sent out that she felt was a bit off. This is an annoyance if you're trying to construct a life where you easily get your own way. But if you're trying to build a household, this is essential. It's not good for a man to rule a household alone. We are incomplete without a spouse. But we're growing terribly confused about the primary purpose of marriage. The culture says marriage exists for personal fulfillment, one of the most destructive ideas ever devised by our enemy. The direct result of this new ideology is that Pew Research recently reported that in a study of 130 different countries, the United States ranked number 1 in single-parent households. That doesn't make us number 1, it makes us dead last. My country is the worst country in the world at building intact households. The church has fired back that marriage is not about being happy, it's about being holy. While there's definitely truth to the reality that growing in holiness is one of the best byproducts of marriage, its functional purpose, to establish a multiplying and ruling household, is primary. We discover the essential components of marriage in the second chapter of Genesis. Quote, "Then the Lord God said, it is not good that the man should be alone. I will make a helper fit for him." There are 3 things that are revealed about the design of marriage in this verse. Number 1, a companion. Men should not be alone. We are designed to be paired with one woman. God says this in the first book of the Old Testament, and in the final book of the Old Testament. Quote, "The Lord was witness between you and the wife of your youth, to whom you have been faithless, though she is your companion and your wife by covenant." Malachi 2:14. So first, a companion. Number 2, a helper. We don't have what it takes to build a household. We need help. It's okay for men to make bad mothers and women to make bad fathers. That's by design. We need each other, and men must have a wife to help him. But help him do what? To build a fruitful, multiplying, filling, subduing, and ruling household. And the number 3, an opposite. Okay, so the word fit in the verse is fascinating, right? It says, I will make a helper fit for him. What does that word mean? It's the Hebrew word kenagdo. I don't know, April, if you've looked that up. I'm sure you could pronounce it better than me, which literally means according to the opposite of him. A husband needs to be opposed by his opposite in order to build a household. Picture the pitched roof of a house that is stabilized by having 2 sides that are opposed to one another. We build a household through the constant opposition between opposites. This continual friction is going to wear out both partners if they lose sight of why this opposition is a feature and not a bug. Most modern people understand the purpose of authority in marriage. They feel the idea that the father has a greater degree of authority than his wife signals her inferiority. That's often because they've never seen a household ruling with a great degree of power. The modern family is more like a recreation club, and giving authority to one member is like forcing the whole club to bend around the preferences of one person. Why? Only because he's male? Of course, that makes no sense. But a ruling household, like any ruling entity, needs the freedom to take quick, decisive action while having checks for times when important factors are being ignored or when an authority degrades into tyranny. One reason the founding fathers in America provided protection for a free press is to allow them to oppose those in power, not to erode governmental authority or to damage the country, but to make the country stronger. Would it be better if the press was given equal authority over the country? Of course not. Does that make the press less valuable? That's a category mistake. Both are important, but for different reasons. While this analogy is not perfect, I receive a stream of regular press releases from my wife. Sometimes they're negative. Quote, we're going way over our food budget, or our daughter is showing a pattern of disrespect. The kitchen is a mess again, and I'm left alone to clean it. I'm concerned about this child's reading level. Our tenant is 5 days late in paying the rent. At first, I was tempted to almost punish my wife for sending these kinds of reports to me. Now I ask for them. Send me everything. Every problem in our family is my problem. We work as a team to solve these problems, and sometimes I need to fully delegate things back to her, but I have both the authority and responsibility over all things in my house, and the buck always stops with me. But wives, please be kind. In order for your husband to embrace shouldering all of this responsibility, he needs you to have compassion for the challenge. The Proverbs warn of the wife who is a dripping faucet. I also receive another kind of press release of positive progress being made, and we celebrate those wins as a family. Remember that the biblical ruling household is a monarchy, not a democracy, but it's an accountable monarchy. The monarch will answer to God, and God, out of love for the monarch, has given him a companion to help and oppose him, whose awareness and intuitions are broader and more active than his own. She sees more detail and sends signals. His gaze is more focused, and he leads in finding solutions. Every couple must craft a rhythm and an arena to tackle the many challenges of household building as a united team. We call this the co-founders meeting. Okay, so I like to kind of tease out the theology of what we're describing there in a companion who helps and opposes, but how does this all work together? So I want to give you guys one tool that can help with this, and it's called the co-founders meeting. I learned this practice while trying to run a complex business. The goal of every leadership meeting was to facilitate constructive conflict. Every business has serious issues to solve, and having a whole team present to find the best possible resolution meant everyone had to freely speak their mind. But this takes three things to do effectively: time, connection, and a repeatable process. Let's consider each. Time. Many marriages suffer from the frustration of constantly violating expectations. If you think a marriage is designed to be a dynamic team overseeing a complex enterprise, then constructive conflict is beneficial and to not only be expected, but cultivated. But if you imagine the ideal marriage is a state of continual romantic bliss, then every tough conversation feels like a violation of expectations. You might even see it as a signal that you weren't meant to be together. We must embrace the fact that the early flush of infatuation was designed to get us into marriage, but the covenant that sustains marriage is there to help us form a lifelong, highly functional partnership that is both romantic and productive. So enjoy the process, give it some space to breathe, go on long walks, have extended lunch meetings, schedule all the time you need. You'll get it back in huge measure as your team flourishes under the dynamic leadership of your opposing strengths and aligned vision. 2, connection. The effectiveness of those intense conversations must be balanced by the feeling of constant connectedness. When I left my last leadership role as a CEO, I wasn't prepared for the sudden severing of so many connections. It felt unnatural. I had spent years working with the management team, and most of those relationships simply ceased to exist. I tried to figure out how to maintain many of those connections, but we all were so busy, and when the context for those relationships disappeared, so did most of the closeness. It's in those moments that I thank God for having a better idea: marriage. We do our productive work from a state of connectedness, and the nature of that connectedness is for life. That means we have date nights without trying to be productive, take off on getaways to grow our relationship, enjoy frequent physical intimacy, reach out multiple times a day to remind each other, I'm thinking about you. Our productivity doesn't permeate all we do, but our connection does. Love is the ecosystem within which a couple rules. And then 3, a repeatable process. Too many couples reinvent the wheel every time they have a meeting. They think it's more authentic or more relational or more fun. It may be those things, but it's also a bad strategy. Save your spontaneity for the bedroom. A team with important things to do and precious human beings relying on their decisions need to be able to snap into business mode and get stuff done. My favorite framework for our meetings borrows some elements from the Level 10 meeting popularized by the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Here's the framework. First, connect. Let's start by experiencing our connection. So spend a couple of minutes just asking a question. How's your morning going? What's one thing you're looking forward to? What's a win from the past day? What's something you're thankful for? So that's kind of the first thing, connect. Number 2, metrics that matter. What are important facts? How are our kids' hearts? On a scale of 1 to 10, how connected do you feel to me? What's in the bank? Let's review the budget. And then to-do reviews. Did we do the things last week that we agreed on? And then household issues. What's not working right now? What seems to be repeatedly breaking down? Do any of our kids feel like they're drifting? Gather all the issues of the family and pick 2 to 3 to discuss and try to solve together. Don't try to solve everything. Trust the system of problem solving. You're learning to rule as a team. You are co-founders of a startup called a household. The better you get, the more you'll be given to steward. And that's it. So, April, what did that start for you?
A lot. That was a good one. Well, I think going back to the very beginning, talking about the idea of a suitable helper that's fit for him being someone who opposes or holds you up. Like the picture that you have on this article is like some trusses, some roof trusses,
Yeah.
and like a skeleton of a building that's being built. And I think that that's a really great visual image of what it takes. Because if one of those was not there, it would just fall down. And so the idea of holding each other up, like you need each other to hold up the structure, is just a really great visual image. And I really have come to appreciate the differences that we represent and the differences that we have, like the differences in our skill sets and our abilities and the ways we see things, our perspectives, of course, and just our personalities. And because of, I think, love, we're able to be curious about those differences. And I think like when you're falling in love with someone, that's, they're intriguing to you. And I think back to the time period in our life when we were meeting each other and falling in love. It was very intriguing, and the differences seem exciting. And then you get married, and not too long into marriage, then it's like the differences can be frustrating and annoying and hard because that's not the way you do it or not what you're used to. And so to get past that into the place where you're actually appreciating each other's differences and the way you oppose each other in the way that you're like holding each other up is a really cool thing to experience, that journey.
Yeah. It seems like if you, this is why I think going back to why was marriage first invented? If it was invented for personal fulfillment, for romantic pleasure, then this opposition is, it's got some elements that are nice. I mean, it makes things maybe more surprising or something spontaneous or novel, but its actual design is, the difference is there because you're building something where it requires diverse skills and different perspectives. There's a huge movement right now that's people are talking about diversity, the importance of diversity. You need to make sure you have a diverse board of directors. And what's been really frustrating is that oftentimes the definition of diversity does not include viewpoint diversity, which is really important. It's critical. If you had everybody who has the same perspective and you're really doing very important things, and so you all see the same 50% of what's happening, but you're all blind to the same 50%, then you're going to make all kinds of bad decisions. And so God, in his wisdom, has created the perfectly diverse team to rule a family in the way he's wired men and women. And the problem is you have to have an arena, right, for that diversity to play out. You have to have a way for your wife, in this case, to oppose you. But you have to prepare for that. Like you have to create that arena so that it's positive for her and for you. And so I'm just curious, kind of what has your experience been in opposing my leadership?
The Family Plan Calendar is the new way to keep your family team organized. Plan your rhythms, menu, household chores, and notes for the family all in one place. Visit familyteams.com to purchase.
Yeah, it's been such a journey because what I was just describing at the beginning, I think, so we've been married 25 years now. And at the beginning, I feel like I was so threatened by our differences it felt almost like not betrayal, but like, wait a second. I thought we agreed about so much, and I thought we were like on the same page about everything, and finding out just different little things was just like shocking every time. I don't know why, but it was. And I personally just had to really journey with that. So my journey started with me, oh, well, then I just need to become a nag, because then if I nag enough about this thing, then he'll change and it'll be magic, and it'll be awesome. And so learning how to, just the whole, you mentioned in the article about like Proverbs mentioning over and over again about the nagging wife or the dripping faucet, like a man would rather go live in the corner of his roof than live with a nagging wife. And I had to really understand that and get to the place where I actually believed that I was kind of being a nagging wife and what that did to you. And it also kind of mixed in with my lack of respect. Like I would make me disrespect you, and then that became this kind of like downward spiral. And so learning how to appreciate each other's differences, and being able to articulate what needed to be said, and for that I needed to say, because I might have something legitimate to say, but then learning how when to back off and when to, okay, I've said my thing and now I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to tell him how to do it. I'm not going to remind him every 5 seconds it still hasn't been done. I'm just going to say, okay, this thing is still existing. Like you listed some really great examples. This kid's heart is drifting. Now the tenant's 6 days late on paying rent because yesterday when I told you at 5 days, you didn't do anything about it. And so now he's still, so learning how to lay it at your feet and then walk away was quite a skill I had to develop. And so, but the better I got at it, the more you were willing to kind of let me in and be like, oh, yeah, I don't really know how to deal with the tenant. So do you have any suggestions, or what do you think? Or I don't know how to deal with that. That's why I haven't done it. What are your thoughts? And then we could actually start to have more conversations about it. And then like you said, you learned how to be able to put things back on me. So we would have a conversation, and then, I mean, this just happened maybe yesterday or something. We were discussing something that needed to be done, and it was kind of just left hanging in the air. And I was like, so is that something you want me to do? And you're like, yes, yeah, if you want to take that. I'm like, okay. So just being able to realize when things are left hanging in the air, learning how to handle that. You don't want to be passive aggressive about it and being like, so are you like what? I don't want to take that thing, so I won't say anything. And then, but both of us have just really had to grow in learning how to take things on too, like believing that we are a ruling household, or that we're trying to be a ruling household. That's our goal, or we're trying to get there. That has changed a lot of my perspective, and made me willing to shoulder the thing that I don't know how to do,
Right.
or do the research I need to do to figure out the best way to handle the situation or something like that.
Right.
Um, so I think that's been kind of thus far my journey
Yeah.
of helping
It's
you.
interesting too, because I kind of poked a little bit at the evangelical description of marriage is not about being happy, but holy.
Mm.
It's almost
Mhm.
like it's kind of depressing the way sometimes that's framed, because I feel like the idea there is, okay, we know that marriage is really hard. And so we need to come up with a reason for why it's so hard. And the reason can't be that God's a really bad architect, right? We just sort of by faith believe that God's good, and maybe it's the fall, or maybe he had a different reason. Maybe he just wanted us to be transformed. And I definitely agree that that's legitimate. That's a part of marriage, and that's a really important part of. But when the Bible talks about that topic of holiness, it talks about the Holy Spirit, and how, and circumstances for sure are a part of changing who we are. The scriptures, it doesn't directly talk about marriage, and I think sometimes the reason we lurch towards that as a way to defend God from maybe being a bad architect is because we don't really understand that the design of marriage is to build a household, and that this is a perfect design for a household. But for the modern Western fragile nuclear family, it doesn't really make a lot of sense why husbands and wives are that different. And then I pushed into this analogy of press releases, which is something that you're very good at. And one of the things I like about being in a democracy where our founding fathers have decided to give really unusual protections to the press. I mean, we have a constitution that does that, and that is tested, but is constantly utilized. As a leader, what that means is that there are at least two things that a leader is going to have to deal with regards to the press. One is everything they do is going to get not only criticized, but those critics are going to be given protected status to publicize that criticism to the widest possible audience, right? So that's a part of it. Now, the reason why that's important is because there's very little to hold him accountable, and so it's really important that those messages actually reach him, so that he has a signal as to whether or not he needs to adjust something. And the other thing I feel like the press does is it makes leaders aware of problems that they may not understand or see directly are affecting their constituents, right? So all of a sudden you find out, oh man, there's a whole region of the country that has, dirty water, or there's just a massive problem at this border, or there's a, constant problem, with regards to the medical system, or any number of things, right? That the leader may be really thinking about one thing, but the press is drawing his eyes to this issue so that he can deal with it. So he knows he's going to be criticized and held accountable, and he knows that his eyes are going to be drawn to problems that he would otherwise really like to ignore. And I would say that a lot of your press releases fall into those two categories. And, I think that any person in power, there's a desire to shoot the messenger. Right now we have a situation with the Chinese Communist Party where the messenger has been shot so many times that a lot of people don't really think that Xi Jinping is actually getting any good information anymore. And so they don't have the kind of protections we do. And so the free press is really broken down, as it always does in communist countries. And I think that's a really good analogy for a lot of marriages, and a lot of, if you're really trying to build a ruling household, the father has a lot of responsibility, but he also has a lot of authority to build something. And his wife is there, and she's got all of this perspective, all of this wisdom, all this ability to see things he can't see. And so there's these signals need to get to him somehow. And so I know that's been a really dynamic part of our relationship. How has that been for you? Like sending those out and
I was
trying to
just
get
going
my
to ask
attention.
you what it's been like for you, because I think that'd be really hard as a man. Because I think what I mean like husband leader. I think, in our dance, we've been trying to learn what God's, structure and order is of the family, and to um acknowledge who has authority. You have to know who's going to be accountable.
Right.
And so I think the more I realized that you're going to be held accountable before the Lord for a lot of what our family does, or how you handle certain things, or how our family handles certain things, then it has helped me have more like grace for you, because I realize how hard that is. Like, I don't want to be um the nag that prevented her husband from doing something, and God's up there. I don't know exactly how it's going to work before the throne, but I want you to be able to stand before him and be responsible for your own actions, without me being the one who, like, well, my wife, she was nagging so much, I just got tired of it, so I just had to do the thing she wanted. I want you to be able to defend your own actions, and feel like you had the space to do that. And so I started getting pretty serious about that probably around like year 7 or 8 of our marriage, and understanding that you were under that weight of responsibility. But I think it's hard, or it would be hard, when you're trying to learn how to exercise authority, and how to make your voice matter, and how to be the one who has the final say. You said the buck stops with you, and that's true. And we're coming to you. There's a lot of us, 5 kids and me, and we're just coming to you with everything, so many things. And you've had to be quick on your feet. You've had to make decisions quickly. You've had to, you can't just say, let me think about that, about all the things that are going on, in a little person's heart, in our household running, and the relationship dynamics between the kids. Like you kind of have to know how to grow and answer those things in a pretty quick manner. So what has that been like for you as you've had to grow in that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the hardest part for me is that I really feel like my natural wiring is the absent-minded professor.
Yes.
I want to watch that movie again. It's been a long time. I think I was a kid but you all know that sort of stereotype of somebody who's just thinking about something really complex and abstract all the time. And around him, he's just like, his shirt's buttoned wrong. And he's like, he's just completely oblivious to the real world.
Mhm.
And so I would say that if I were to completely give into my strengths and ignore my weaknesses, I go further into that world. And I think that what's happened with a family is that it's caused me to find tools that will cause me not to be a careless father.
Yeah.
A father who doesn't follow through, a father who, yeah, shoots the message, all the things, so that I can kind of live into my strengths or into my innate wiring. And I think a lot of people, because we celebrate individualism so much, I think this is such a misunderstanding that
Yeah.
we think, in the workplace, I could literally get a job that rewards me for my strengths and compensates for all of my weaknesses. I could be a professor and I could have, teacher's assistants and a whole faculty or a whole administration that takes care of all the details, so that all I need to do is show up and do what I enjoy doing. That's, for the most part. But, as a father, I have to do all the father things. And I have 5 kids, like you said, and our complex life and multiple businesses and everything we're running and ministries. And so it's like, I think what it's really been two things I've had to do. Number one, I've had to completely ignore self-pity. Like if you have any ounce of self-pity, I'm an absent-minded professor, feel bad for me. I'm not built for this. Like that's so not proper for a father or a man to hide behind those kinds of excuses as much as you want to, but you can't let yourself, indulge in self-pity. And so just embracing the role, embracing all of the role, all of the challenge of it. But then you could just feel constantly incompetent if you do
Right.
that and you're not wired for it. And
Yeah.
I certainly have that problem. And so the way I've overcome that is really a search for tools. And as you're reading this book, basically I try to spend as much time unpacking tools as I do theology. I've never really quite seen a book do it the way I'm trying to do it. And this is really a description of how I live. I love thinking about a very complex theology. I love thinking about first principles, but I know that all of that is useless if I don't have a tool that actually causes the principles to bear fruit in my life. And so I brought up this idea of the co-founder meeting, right? In this context, you and I have a meeting every week where I show up and there's metrics involved. We have quarterly goals that we're reviewing, and we're ratcheting up, our experience of those meetings, because I think that I've really struggled with mastering that tool. And this is one of my goals for 2024 is like master the management tools, knowing that if I were to go get a 40-hour a week job somewhere, I would not ever apply to be a middle manager of anything. I would be so miserable. But
Yeah.
on Mondays, I'm a manager.
Manager. Yeah. That's our day for the
Yeah.
meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's really good. I think it would be very humbling to have to do that. And um the skill of learning how to listen to me, I think, we both have to be gentle with each other to make sure that I'm not like emasculating you with my ideas or how I'm delivering what I'm saying. But then also wanting you to feel like encouraged and supported, and your ability to like lead our family is intact.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there is you don't want the press to overthrow the president,
Yeah.
using that
To
analogy.
back off and let the leader lead,
That's right.
and just say like, it's with, because our relationship is dedicated to the Lord, then it's like God is, now it's up to the Lord. Like I was able to relay this stuff to Jeremy. I told him what I was worried about, but now it's up to the Lord to either convict him that I'm right or, change my heart to like calm me down a little bit or something. And so I think it's led to a really sweet, would you say like interdependence? Is that
Yeah,
the right
totally.
word?
Well, I
Yeah.
think this is where romance comes full circle. And this is
Yeah.
where I think a lot of people get stuck. You experience all this infatuation, romance in the early stage of your marriage. Then you're having kids and complexity and busyness, and you're like, then you're divide and conquer and at each other's throats, and you don't have good tools, good rhythms. But what
Yeah.
happens if you conquer that and actually start to work more together? And that every time, I would say the vast majority of times you're interacting, you feel like it's beneficial for the household, beneficial for what you both want because you're totally aligned on what you're building. Then the romance almost like gets swept up into another level, right? Then you're like, wow, I'm so like, look at our team, look at us, look at us do, like we always say that,
Doing
like,
it.
so yeah, I think that's our hope for you guys are listening to this. And this is something as a journey. April and I are definitely still in process, but we're giving you guys kind of an update on how we think about this area. That it really does the theology in Genesis 2 of a wife who's a companion, who helps, who opposes, and who's aligned with her husband, and then finding the tools that work for you guys. We gave you one that works for us, and we give you more details in other arenas if you want to get into the whole idea of having co-founders meetings. But I think it's been a really important part of our relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks, April.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to Jeremy Pryor's podcast. Make sure you hit that follow button so you don't miss out on any future content. Follow Jeremy on Twitter and Instagram, as well as his Substack blog, all linked in the description. See you next time.